Well, good morning, everybody. Here we are, another episode, and this episode is all about publishing. Ever thought of writing a book? Ever wondered how to do that? I've got somebody on the end of the phone, who I'm going to talk to, and it's Taryn. Taryn, good morning.
Good morning. How you doing?
I'm all right. How are you?
Yeah, I'm good. Thank you. Enjoying the sunshine this morning.
Good. Hey, is it really banging down over there?
It is. It's all blue skies. It's beautiful.
Because you're over in Lincolnshire, is that right?
Yeah, I'm actually bang smack in Lincoln itself.
Oh, say no more. I bet it's beautiful with the old cathedral and lit up and everything, yeah?
Yeah, it's lovely.
Yeah, bless. Now, Taryn, give us a brief background, because our listeners, they like to know a little bit about you. So before we get there, let me just say, you did a TED Talk.
I did,
which
yes.
Which was absolutely cracking. I was enthralled by it. And you know what? That story that you tell there leads nicely in for us. And I think it just encapsulates everything that you're about, doesn't it, really?
It does, yeah. I've been reading from a very, very small dot, published at the age of 13, and it was something that writing was something I always wanted to do, and then life kind of gets in your way, but then opportunities pop up, and if you're clever enough to spot them, you take them, and that's exactly what I did. So I'm very, very fortunate to do something that I love and keeps me getting up every morning enjoying it.
Well, I mean, you say 13, published at 13. What was the first thing you ever got published?
It was a short story. My English teacher was a phenomenal man, and he introduced us to one of my favourite authors, which is Edgar Allan Poe. And he read us a story, and he asked us to write it from a different perspective, which I did. And that was the story that was published. So yeah.
What was the story about?
It's Time Clock of the Heart. So the story is about an old man who is lying in bed dying, and his carer, who he trusts, basically shines a light into his room every night, and it's told from the perspective of the man who's doing it, because he's overcome with greed, and he wants the old boy to die quicker so he can get his hands on his fortune. So I wrote it from the perspective of the old man in bed, and the thoughts that he had of, was it something evil coming for him? Was it the gate of hell opening, or was it his dear departed wife showing a light for him to follow? And that was how I wrote it, and then finding out that it was this man, how I exacted my revenge.
How on earth do you come up with that? 13 years old, you shouldn't be thinking about murder and slaughter and everything else.
Why not? All those hormones raging, it's the perfect time to be thinking about that.
Let me exact it out on a young boy. Let me try this. Yeah. Do you want to go out with Taryn? No, I'm all right. No, she's a bit of a doolap, that one. Dearie me. Where did you go to school then?
I went to school in a Midland town called Bedworth, or Bedworth, as it's known to everyone that lives there. So it's just outside of Coventry. Born in Coventry, raised in Bedworth.
Because Coventry, I mean, is a very cultural place, isn't it?
It is, yeah.
How comes you moved then?
My mum, bless her, decided that at the age of 40, she remarried and bought holiday apartments in Skegness. And at the age of 16, I was transported from Coventry to Skegness, and lovingly referred to it as Scumness for the rest of my life.
Yeah,
I loathed and despised it. You can imagine at 16, sort of going there when you don't know anybody, and it's very hard to make friends at that age, because I hated the grammar school. I remember an interview with the headmaster, who looked like Fish from Marillion. And I remember he was sat with his feet upon the desk. And it's, "So, Taryn, tell me why you want to come to our school." And I remember looking at him and going, "I don't." My mum was like nudging me in the ribs. "Don't say that." I'm like that. I don't want to be here. So I joined, I got myself a YTS, so I'm giving my age away here dramatically, but yeah, I got a YTS in Skegness Probation Office, which, I mean, I can tell you was not the place for a 16-year-old. And I went to college in Boston, well, Louth and Boston, got a BTEC National in Business Management and Finance, and then went, right, I am done. And I went to London for a while, and I worked as a nanny in London. And then I went back to Coventry, where I kind of messed about, but genuinely didn't know what I wanted to do. And eventually temped for 6 months, which was the best thing. Actually, no, it was 18 months I did, temped for 18 months. Best thing I ever did. Figured out what I was good at, what I wasn't good at, what I liked, what I didn't like, and more importantly, how to behave in circumstances where you knew you don't know anybody. So it gave me the confidence to be able to walk into any company and work, basically. And it was the best grounding I could ever have for career moving forward.
It really is. I mean, you know, I used to work in London as a technical manager many, many moons ago for Alfred Marks. And you're right. I mean, just being out there, I mean, the days have changed, you know, when you can just move around freely and everything else, it seems.
Yeah.
Back in the 80s, I can remember that if you weren't on the move within 18 months, you were classed as an old fuddy-duddy.
Yeah.
You know? It was so progressive then, you know, 18 months, move on, get the next one, get the next one. And each time we were pushing our salaries up and up and up and up.
Yeah. I mean, it was a phenomenal time to do things. I mean, so one of the first jobs that I wangled my way into was working on a help desk for IT for computers. Now, I mean, those days, a computer took up a whole room. You know, the server took up the whole room. You had these huge, great computers on desks that were still massive things.
Yeah.
And I know I spent most of my time going, have you switched it on? Has the cleaner unplugged it? You know, and those sort of questions. But I learnt about computers, and I was only 19, so really young to be going into it. And what that did, I mean, that's put me in such a brilliant position because I knew how they worked, I knew how they ran. I started to understand code, but at a time when computers were viewed with suspicion, I was sort of right there. And the opportunities I had, so I mean, this will make you laugh, I was a crane driver on the Isle of Grain docks. So it was the first, that's down in Kent. I moved from Coventry to Newbury in Berkshire, which is where I learned about computers, and then from there I moved down to Kent. So I got this job, and they were the first fully computer operated docks in the country. And because I understood how computers worked, they asked me to go in. So I would, the big container ships, we would unload those by computer. But of course, if the computers went down, which in those days they did, you'd then have to be able to go up and actually drive the crane. So I was a proper crane driver, which was a lot of fun.
Were you licensed?
Do you know what? I can't. Probably not. I don't think they bothered it. They were more concerned if I could actually do a computer.
That's the thing nowadays, isn't it? If you look at today, you've got to have a piece of paper for absolutely.
Oh, I know. I think the only piece of paper I had was one that got me through the door and said, "Shit, this girl knows computers." I think the biggest qualification I needed there was to be able to put up with Docker language.
Yeah. See, that must have been
There's not much you can call me that I haven't heard. Let's put it that way.
I was just going to say, yeah, to take on that vocabulary.
Yeah.
And mate, as a writer, I mean, it must have been tremendous.
But you know, I mean, everyone says to me, "Why don't you write your own story?" And there's two answers to that. One is that it's not ready. We've all got a book in us. Mine at the minute, I don't know which direction to go in. But and to be fair, I am so busy writing everybody else's. But yeah, I mean, when I come to do it, I've got a wealth of characters that I can pull out from. And crane drivers are one of them.
Yeah. Hey, bless. Now that actually leads us nicely into, like you said, you know, everybody's got a book inside them. Do you believe that?
I do, yeah. So I got into publishing really, really obscurely. I'd recently been divorced and started my own company, and I was writing web copy, building websites, writing web copy and doing marketing. That was the direction I'd gone. Once I got bored with engineering and project management, I went into advertising and marketing. And I was building somebody's website, and they said to me, Taryn, you've written all our copy for the website, and it's brilliant. Have you ever proofread a book? And I said, no, not something I ever thought about. And they said, well, yeah, would you run an eye over this novel I've written? And it was just like a light bulb going off. And I worked with this author really, really closely, backwards and forwards. He was a brilliant writer, but he was quite a bit older, so his I think he was reluctant to do sort of sex scenes and things. So he built up the drama of this couple getting together, and how fraught it was, how they got together, and how intense their love for each other was. And it built it up and built it up, and then he was like, and then he blew out the candle and he kissed her. I was like, and
No.
and what, you know? So we sort of worked backwards, and I realised that was the thing that I loved, was actually working with someone to get the book out of them. And that's something I've done all the way through. I mean, sort of long story short, he then said, can you publish it? And I went, yeah, I can. And I created the publishing company 10 years ago now, and just did a few books, but then it sort of picked up, and I had a chat with somebody who's in the industry, and they said to me, Taryn, one of the issues is that you don't have a niche. So when we look at FCM Publishing, nobody really knows what it stands for. And I thought, yeah, they're right. So last year, I created a second publishing company. So I now have two. So FCM Publishing is all about non-fiction. It's all business books. So I work very closely with business owners to pull their business story out of them, and also with self-help people. So counsellors, people that have gone through trauma, to draw that story out. But then I also created Chronos Publishing, which is all about life stories and novels. So it's a very long-winded way of answering your question. Yes, there is a story in everybody. It's just them deciding which story they want to tell, how they want to tell it, and then getting them past the fear of thinking that they can't write.
Let me ask you a question, because I mean, like, your first, what was the name of the author, the first author that you published it?
It was, oh my God, my brain's just gone completely. It was Dominic Buffery, and it was a paranormal sort of good versus evil thriller.
Because I mean, how did you get over the fact that, you know, it ended in a kiss? Did you actually suggest the rewrite and to put the?
I rewrote it.
You did it?
Yeah, I rewrote it and sent it back to him, and he sort of spluttered, like, oh, I'm not sure, and then he toned it down a little bit, and we compromised. But yeah, it ended up with a love scene in it. So
yes, because sometimes it makes it, doesn't it?
It does, yeah. I mean, don't get me wrong, it was not graphic or anything like that.
No,
but
no.
You know, you kind of, as the reader, you felt very let down. But
well, just to end it on a kiss, that's like going on a date, isn't it?
Yeah.
You're paying out all that money for the meal, for the pictures, for this and that, and the doorstep, and you get the kiss. It's like,
Steve, that's not the attitude. You don't take somebody out to dinner in order to get laid. Now, come on.
Oh dear, I tell you, the good old days. Back in the 70s, that's how we would roll, you know.
I know.
Oh dear, oh dear. Any famous people that you've actually published?
Yeah. So I published. It's a really cute story. So just about every author I've ever had come through the door has been word of mouth. which is brilliant. Yeah, I don't think there's a better compliment than you can get than getting a referral. But this Asian lady contacted me and she said, I want to do a cookbook. I said, well, I've never done a cookbook before, but we'll give it a shot. But at the time, I just had major spinal surgery, so I couldn't drive, and I was kind of on the sofa with a big sort of neck collar on, hardly moving. She said, "That's fine. I'll come to you. I'll make you lunch, and we can have a chat." Okay, fair enough. So on the day and she laughs because she knows I describe this way. This Asian Tasmanian devil burst into my lounge, cussing and stressing, and so I looked at her and said, "Hey, I've not met you before, but I'm kind of sensing a bit of tension here. What on earth's going on?" She said, "I've just been to Waitrose and I've got my spice boxes, and they want me to tell what my USP is. And I don't know what a USP is." Oh, and I said, "Right, just stop." And she looked at me, and to this day, I don't know why I said it, but I looked her dead in the eye and I said, "Parveen, don't worry about it. Within 2 years, everybody will know your name. You won't need a USP." And she looked at me and she said, "How are we going to do that?" And I said, "With a book." She went on to cook dinner and trash my kitchen and kick over a black coffee all over my cream carpet. And it was an absolute nightmare. And she still is, but I love her to bits. And we created her book. And what I said to her was, as we were chatting through the recipes, she would say to me, so when I was doing this one, my mum would say this, and my mum would tell me that, or she'd smack my fingers with a wooden spoon. And it became really apparent very, very quickly that every single one of her recipes had a story behind it, and she cooked out of love. The recipes she chose were all from love. And I said to her, "That's the difference in your cookbook. That's what we're going to do. So we will, for every recipe, there will be an anecdote that talks about why you've done it and what it means to you. And on top of that, we'll have a full glossy image of either the finished dish or you making it. Because I don't know about you, Steve, but if you ever go through a recipe book and there's no picture and you've never cooked it before, how the hell do you know what it's supposed to look like?
Exactly. You need a visual, don't you?
Yeah. So we put this book together and it's beautiful. And I mean, I actually use it myself and I love it. It's so easy to use. And Parveen is a total dynamo. So off she went and she got her book and she said, "Right, this is it. I'm going to use this. This is going to springboard me." And blow me, she got herself an ITV TV show, Parveen's Indian Kitchen, which is actually, some of it is being re-shown on ITV on Saturday mornings with, can't remember the guy's name, James Martin. So she's currently back on TV at the moment with that. So there's Parveen. And then she was doing a talk at the East of England show, and Bob Champion, the jockey, went up to her and said, "I've seen you've got a book. What's your publisher like?" And she said, "Taryn's brilliant. I wouldn't be where I am without her." So he then rang me and we sat down and he said, "Would you help me retell my story?" For anybody that doesn't know who Bob is, he was a jump jockey, Grand National jockey in the 80s. Well, in the 70s, really. He was at the top of his career. In those days, jockeys were really the kind of the footballers of today. They were massive. And he was diagnosed with testicular cancer in 1979 and given 8 months to live. He had grueling and extreme chemotherapy, and the only thing that kept him going was the desire to win the Grand National on a particular horse, and that was what kept him through the chemo, which in those days was just brutal. And having had 4 sessions of chemo, he went to the hospital and they said, "No, there's still a shadow on your lung. You're going to have 2 more sessions of chemo," which meant he couldn't train for that year's national, and he was devastated. The next day he went to see Old Aniti run, and the horse went lame and they wanted to put him down, and he said that it was just like the whole rug was pulled out from underneath him. But he looked at the owners and he said, "Don't put him down. The 2 of us will come back together." And he did. And 11 months later, he won the Grand National on Old Aniti.
He did.
So
That was a big deal, wasn't it?
It was huge. And I mean, everybody kind of knows that story. And obviously you got the film Champions where John Hurt plays him.
Yeah.
And his book was originally done up to that point. But what people didn't know was that after that, he went on to create his own cancer charity. And what happened was after he won the national, people sent him their winnings.
Really?
And yeah, he had thousands upon thousands of pounds, which obviously in those days was a lot of money. And he said, he didn't know what to do with it, so they created this charity, and he created a much nicer waiting room for people in the hospital, and then he went on to create his own test centre and
Wow.
research centre. So over the years, over the last 40 years now, he has had, I think, over 15 million for male cancer research. His charity is the most successful small cancer charity in the UK.
What's it called?
It's called the Bob Champion Cancer Trust. In 2000, through his research, well, not his research, but his team's research, they eradicated death from testicular cancer.
Wow.
Which was obviously what he had. And I said to him, Bob, why didn't you stop at that point? Because that was your aim, was to stop men dying from testicular cancer. And I said, yeah, so nobody would have questioned you stopping at that point. And he said, why would I? He said, I feel guilty every single day that I wake up when so many people don't.
Oh.
And they're now working to find cures or eradicate prostate cancer. So that book was brilliant. I mean, it was so good to write with Bob. I mean, he's such a character, and but such a gentleman as well. I mean, there was so many stories about how he betrayed his wife and all kinds of things. So many lies told about him. And I said to him, Bob, this is your chance to tell your story. This is your chance to get the truth out there. And he said, I don't air my dirty laundry in public. Those women are the mother of my children. And people closest to me know the truth, and that's all that matters.
Wow, that's profound.
And I said to him, I said, well, that's such a gentleman. And the way I looked at it was, there are three sides to every story. There's your side, their side, and in his case, it was the press's side as well. But he said, I don't want to do it. I don't want to do that. So that was great. We launched it at the Grand National, which, I mean, as you can imagine, was a phenomenal thing to do. Had him there, and
clever bit of marketing.
It was a very good bit of marketing and a great day out too. So yeah, so they're probably the two most famous. But every author I work with is brilliant, and I am genuinely very, very lucky with the people that I work with.
That's good. You see that again. See, this just nicely leads us into the next section.
Go on.
And that is, let's say I've got a book inside me.
Mm-hmm.
Where do I start? Where does anybody start?
This is going to sound really, really pat, but basically you just sit down and write. I funny enough, small plug here, I actually put a blog out. There's a blog on the website and also on LinkedIn as well that gives you the starting points to do it. And the things that I say is, first off, sit down and think about what the book's for. So, if it's a business book, is it a door opener? Is it to springboard you? Is it to get you into places? So, for instance, we published a book a few years ago for a guy and he said, there's two companies I just can't get in front of. Once the book came out, he did a handwritten note, popped it inside the book to the CEO of the company. He got meetings with both of them, and the book more than paid for itself in terms of the work that he generated out of it. So that was his reason for doing it. It worked, and it was a brilliant deal for him. I've got another author, Don Watson, who wrote the Rockstar Retirement Program. That's all about retiring almost now, as opposed to waiting until you're 70 and you're too old to enjoy your life. So it's about how can you live your life differently, and do things that will give you more value now as opposed to later.
That's interesting.
His book, I mean, he was the first one I did as an audio book, which was a brilliant thing to see how that's put together. My goodness, well, you'll know, awful lot of work involved in that.
Right.
But he said to me that since publishing his book, his company has had over £300,000 worth of additional business.
Oh, lovely.
Yeah. So, you know, there was, so what's your reason? That's the first thing. So, you know, I work with business coaches. It's a way to help them get onto a platform of speaking. If you can send a book off to an agent, say, this is what I'm about, this is what I talk about, it's a brilliant platform builder. I've spoken to, so a book that I published this year, Surviving the War Against Yourself, is a harrowing, and I mean harrowing, story of mental illness. Thomas and Amber are married. Tom suffers from various mental illnesses, including PTSD and psychosis. And their story is written from two sides. So Tom will talk about what it's like actually living with that, and what was going on in his mind at the time, how he felt. And Amber talks about it from her perspective of being his wife and his carer, and the problems that she's found, particularly within the sort of privacy and people not talking to her, and not including her in his treatment. And there's a point in that book where they both talk about him trying to take his own life, and how he describes putting the noose around his neck and pulling it tight, and she describes finding him on the floor, the beam having cracked in the garage.
Oh.
It's not an easy read, but their reason for doing it was to shine a light, one, on the fact that anybody can have a mental illness,
Right.
and what it's like to go through, but also for carers, so because they're often, their voice isn't heard. So they literally just wanted to share their stories so that people felt that they weren't on their own. So there are a lot of reasons for writing a book. You just got to decide what it is. If it's a novel, it's probably because the characters inside your head are waking you up at 3 o'clock in the morning going, let me out.
Right.
And when they do that...
that happens to a lot of people though, doesn't it?
It does, yeah. To be fair, when I've been working with people, it's happened to me as well, because you sort of take that on. So if you've got a voice in your head that is screaming and wants to be heard, then they won't let go until they are. And you'll wake up with plot twists, you'll wake up with ideas, and the best thing you can do is have a notebook by the side of your bed and write them down.
Right.
So that's my first tip, is decide why you're writing it, and what it's going to be used for. Give it a working title, because you'll know this yourself, that if you put a name on something, if you create a project and you give it a name, it becomes more real. And then you're more inclined to actually go ahead and do something with it.
That's a good piece of advice. That, like you say, it's real then, isn't it? Like,
it is, yeah.
Get to it. Right, okay, where am I going to start?
I've had authors that have actually, before they've even written it, have created a mock-up book cover and put that as almost like a screensaver, so that every time they put the computer on, they can see the book, and they've kind of visualised having done it. So if you're a person that works well with vision boards or visualisation in any way, that's a really good tip. Second tip is then to visualise your your reader. So what does your perfect reader look like? What sort of books are they reading? Why are they reading your book? What are they going to take from it? And then it's a case of creating a really, really simple skeleton. So decide what the book's about, what tone of voice it's going to have, and then just write yourself maybe 10 chapters to begin with, what's in each chapter, and bullet points the things you want to put in each chapter. And what that does, that kind of keeps you on track. And then my final tip is start with the easy one. So if it's a business book, and you're writing about your biggest success or something like that, and you find that easy, write that one first. Don't set yourself the difficult one to do, because you'll just never do it.
Right.
So write the thing that's easiest. and then just keep going. Don't worry about grammar. Don't worry about format. Don't worry about any of that. Just write it, because there are people out there like me and the team that I work with that have all the skills to make it read right, to sort out your grammar. I get people saying to me, I can't write, I'm dyslexic. Well, you know what? So was Agatha Christie, so was a few other people. Didn't stop them.
Wow.
So that is not a reason to write.
Right, but what would you do in that case? Let's say they are dyslexic, yeah? And it's all over the place. Have you ever had any audible, recordings and everything else, and you take it from there?
When I'm ghostwriting, that's what I do. I will do what you're pretty much doing here, and I will sit and record conversations and type those up. I get sent books from people that are dyslexic, and we literally just go through it and rewrite it. Obviously, I mean, there's a cost implication to that, because we've got to pay sort of editors and everything else to do it, but we can still do it. Just because your words aren't the way everybody else reads it doesn't mean that we can't fix it. Of course we can. It's not a problem. The one thing I always say is there are people out there that can amend your words sorry, so that your sentence makes sense, but what we can't do is write what's in your head if you haven't got it out of there.
Yeah. See, I mean, it's interesting you say that, because there are people that are probably frustrated and just thinking, oh, I don't know. Oh, they write it all down, they get it down, they read it, and they go, oh my God, that's rubbish. Oh, let me discard it. When actually what you're saying is, no, don't do that. Just get it all down on paper. And you know what? There are people out there that can make head or tail.
Make total sense of it.
Yeah.
And I say that you can record it. There are the software that transcribes it for you. There are people out there that will transcribe it. That there is not being able to write, not being grammatically correct is not a reason to not tell your story.
Wow. See, I always thought there was. I thought that was a sticking point.
No, absolutely not.
Myth gone. Bang. Out the window. Move on. Get the next one in, lady.
Yeah, the one that you do need to be aware of is the fact that you're sticking your head above a parapet. And as you know, Steve, the minute you do that, some bugger's going to want to shoot you in the head. You've got to be prepared for that. And it's one of the things that I said to Tom and Amber when they did theirs. One of the things in the book was that they both suffered from bullying, and they'd had trolls and things. And I said, when this book comes out, are you ready for that? Because some people are very, very cruel, and unnecessarily so, but they're out there. As long as you're prepared for that, as long as you're ready for people to discount what you say or be negative about it, then you're fine. But going into it not thinking that people won't, then that might hit you a little bit harder.
Yeah, I think the thing for me is, like you say, I mean, any form of media, like you say, stick your head above that parapet, they're going to slate you. There's always someone out there that thinks they're better than you, or has got a better story, or who do you think you are? You know what I mean? It's one of them, isn't it?
My answer to that is, well, where's your book?
Yeah, there it is. Bang. You see what I mean about you? I mean, people look at you and think, what a nice lady. No, I see the opposite there.
Yeah, you know what? You want to slag somebody off for telling their story? Well, then once you've written yours and published it, and we can all see how much better yours is, then you've got a platform to speak from. But when you haven't, shut up.
Yeah, no, it's a good point. Yeah. So, okay, so now what I've gone and done is I've gone and written this thing. Yeah. What's my next step? What would I need to do?
The two things you can do. One is find an agent. And what an agent will do is they will pitch your book to suitable publishers, and a lot of, certainly the big four, HarperCollins, Penguin, Hachette, those guys, they're not going to take a book from the man off the street. They will only go through agents that they know and trust. And as you can imagine, they're getting thousands and thousands of submissions every year.
Right.
So you can send your book to an agent. They will take a percentage of any deal that you get if your book is picked up by a publisher. So there's that you can do. you can send a submission to independent publishers like myself, and if it's something that if it's a genre that we work with, then we will review it and give you an answer either way. Or you can self-publish, and there are lots of ways that you can do that. Amazon have made it very, very easy to do. It's a little bit of a bugbear for me, because there's a lot of absolute dross being published because people have made it so easy, and what that does, that kind of reflects on the smaller independents like myself when it comes to bookshops, because they're kind of a bit wary. I'm very, very lucky now that I've established a relationship with distributors and with the bookstores themselves, so that when I put something forward, it's taken seriously. But it's taken a lot of graft to do that. What I will say is, if you do self-publish, the chances of a bookshop actually taking it are very, very slim, simply because there is no reliability that you've done all the things that a publisher will do, which is proofread it, format it, make sure it reads right, make sure it's got professional cover, all of those things, and it's really important to do that. It reflects on you, but so they're your answers. You can pitch it to an agent, you can pitch it to a publisher, or you can publish it yourself.
That's even in that format, that garbled format, you just hand that over, or are we talking, we'd need to get help first in order to put it into a format that's readable and accepted?
If you are pitching it to an agent to go to one of the big boys, then I would say send it off to an editor first and get it professionally proofread. And it pays anyway. I mean, you're going to have any book professionally proofread and edited if you want it to be taken seriously by a publisher.
What type of costs are we talking?
Come on, Steve. That kind of question's always depends on the size of the book, depends on the word count, depends on how badly it's written, how much work it needs doing. Some proofreaders work per word, some will work per page count. So it all depends really on how much it is and how much your editor is. And again, with everything, you pay for what you get. So I got a book sent to me recently for publishing that had been professionally ghostwritten, and I read it and I went back and I said, I'm really, really sorry, but I can't publish it. The reason being is that it reads like My First Day at the Beach by Bob's aged 8. Today I did this, I went here and I did that, and it was nice.
Oh my goodness me.
It was there was no personality in it, there was no character to it, and what we've then had to do is go back and completely rewrite it, which is a massive sort of cost implication and time implication. So do shop around with the people you get, and make sure that you get referrals, make sure that it's as with anything, you wouldn't go to the first mechanic that you find. So do find someone that's going to work with you and understands, and be able to say to them, this is what I want my book to sound like. There's nothing worse than getting a book. Another story, I got an author who I know really well, somebody who's a business person I know really, really well, and I'm sure he won't mind me saying that. So when he sent me his manuscript, I was really excited, because I know how funny he is and I know how talented he is, and I got it and I went back to him and I said, who the hell's written this? And he said, why? I said, it's rubbish. But I didn't actually use the word rubbish, I used something else. But I said, it doesn't sound like you. That there's no sense of your personality in this whatsoever. It could be any generic person. So he went back and rewrote it, and the second manuscript he sent me was brilliant, absolutely perfect. You could hear his voice all the way through.
It's strange though, isn't it? I mean, you mentioned personality and character within words, and it's like some people will be thinking, well, how do you convey that?
Everybody has something that they say all the time. So for instance, when we did Bob's book, Bob used several phrases, and when you're working with somebody really closely and you are interviewing them, those phrases come out. So you make sure that those phrases are peppered throughout the book, so people reading it will go, oh yeah, that's definitely. There was a couple of sentences I wrote, and Bob said, Taryn, I don't even know what that word means, so I certainly wouldn't use it. So it's about being absolutely true to how you sound. And particularly within a business book, if I've or a self-help book, if I've seen you on stage and I've heard you speak, and then I pick up your book and it sounds nothing like you,
Right.
then I'm being robbed. I want to hear you say the things that I know that you would say.
It's interesting you say that. I'm reading a book. I'm just embarking on a documentary of a fella that I've met. His name is David Tyman. Now, David left the UK back in the early 80s and went off to America to make his fortunes with just a suitcase.
Mm-hmm.
He built a business within 5 years, became a multi-millionaire. He was dealing with the likes of Ralph Lauren, who was it, Gap, Macy, you name it, all the big brands, yeah?
Yeah.
And then he lost it all. I think it was back in, it was in the early 90s because they had the big crash, yeah?
Mm-hmm.
But the point is, when I read his book, you're right, I hear him. It's really weird because, I mean, the documentary is really about his life, his story, because that's what I love to do. I love people's stories. And again, like you say, there is one in all of us. But
Mm-hmm.
this guy is exceptional in as much that he's now a brand guru. And he's taken all that experience from life and 3 ups and downs, but has come back even stronger. And this book is just, like you're saying, it's little phrases.
Yeah.
There was one where he's going, now listen to me, darling, you really need to take this on. And you're like, what?
Yeah.
And that's it. Oh, and he's lovely. Him and his partner. Now his partner's another exceptional fella. They're in fashion. You meet the pair of them, and you're like, "Oh my God, let me read the book."
Yeah.
Let me see the documentary on this guy. I mean, it's amazing.
So if you'd read that and there was nothing in that book that you could associate with the person you'd met, you'd be really, really disappointed.
Yeah, and he talks about being true to yourself as well.
Yeah, it is. And yeah, I mean, the word authentic is bandied around left, right, and centre, but in this case, it's true. You've got, if you've got a northern accent, then write with a northern accent.
Right.
If you swear, then swear. There's no rule that says you can't swear in a book just because it's a business book. Sometimes that sort of shock. I mean, obviously, I'm not suggesting it's a docker read.
Right. Yeah.
But, sometimes it kind of shocks you as much to go, oh, okay. But if you know that that's how that person would say it,
yeah,
that's fine. It's the same with humour. A lot of business people think their book has to be really straight down the line and very serious. God, does it really? Are you going to read that? Yeah. No, you're not. You're going to get 2 pages and go, well, this is boring.
Yeah.
Put it down.
It's interesting that you say that because, I mean, I've just embarked on, I've just had to create a training program for a company dealing with, what is it? Abuse.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, of all levels. And it's how people would do one-to-ones, yeah?
Yeah.
But over a telephone or a computer. And how they call it disinhibition. How they just let themselves loose, it gets out there and their mouth runs away with them and the consequences that has and everything else. So this company needed a training program. We came up, we delivered it. 34 people went on it. And it was like, where do we go from here? The point I'm making there is I had to be a little bit careful with the language.
Yep.
the way it was coming across, because it was aimed at, well, the target market were people to do the training. They were going to be like the advisors. So you couldn't actually get real. But what, I was going through some of the slides and I wanted to say particular phrases, and it was like, that's not going to be acceptable. But I think you're right. I mean, it's even with the training, it's like, get your own personality in there and project that.
Yeah, it's about knowing your audience.
Yeah.
So if you think your audience will take that, and that back in the 40s, swearing, was really, really frowned about. In the 80s, it wasn't used, but today, I've got two boys that are 22 and 20, and the language, whilst they're very respectful of me when they're speaking to each other, that there is no filter. It's they say what they think.
Yeah.
But it's not used. If I swear at you, it's because I mean it. Whereas they almost use it as punctuation. So I think you've got to know who your audience is. If your book is a real top level professional industry book, then maybe you wouldn't be dropping the F-bomb in there.
Sure.
But you know what? If in a board meeting you two man and go, you're all a bunch of effing idiots, and that's what you would say, why wouldn't you put that in?
Yeah. Well, I've noticed, I don't know whether you've noticed this, you see, more and more films now are using the C word.
Yeah. That's possibly one word that I am really reluctant to put in a book, I've got to be honest.
Right.
I have, if it's done in the right way. I mean, I've got a rom-com and he uses it, and I kind of, it was like, can I? I don't like it. Yeah. That's my own personal view. But if it works in the context, then it works.
That's the key there, isn't it? The context. You see, I'm from down south, and I grew up with the C word, but it had so many different meanings. You know what I mean? You'd say it within a greeting. You'd have a go at someone. You'd within jokes. And it was just one of those words. And the same with the F word.
Yeah, my other half's in Leeds, and he worked at a radio station, and they used it all the time, and he will use it, and I'll say to him, to me, it's a word to be used in extreme circumstances when there isn't any. And I remember one of the things that I don't have very many memories of my own dad, but one of the things my mum said he always said was swearing is a form of a limited vocabulary, and you only use that word when you can't think of anything better to say.
Right.
And now, in his generation, that's true. However, for me, the C word is probably one that I would use when I'm so angry that I can't think of anything better.
Oh dear. She uses it, people.
There are only a couple of people I would ever use it for.
Yeah, I think the thing is, don't be hypocritical, at the end of the day, isn't it? If you're going to use it, you're going to use it. It's like with the film scripts and everything that we write, Scott and I, sometimes those characters, because they are bawdy, that's the turf they come from.
Yeah, absolutely.
And like you say, it's conveying the right context or putting it in the right context.
It is, and also I think different accents lead into it better. Yeah, your accent works really well with it. It makes it your accent will make it sort of more friendly, whereas mine makes it more brutal. I think a northern swearing is definitely more powerful than a southern one.
Right, it's funny you say that, because when I used to meet another mate of mine, an actor, and I would be with him 5 minutes, and all of a sudden he would get onto the Cockney link, and then he'd start using the profanities and everything else, and his wife would turn up, and she would say to him, in one particular scenario, go and get me a drink. And he just went, fuck off, get it yourself. In that, you know what I mean? I can get away with that because of how I deliver it. He just didn't have the delivery, but he used it. Well, I'll tell you what, she slaughtered him in public.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I imagine so. Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah, I mean, it's quite different. I shall swear on here, but if I said to you, "You're a total bastard," I've got that kind of harshness, whereas you'd be like, go on, you say it.
well, bastard,
Yeah,
you
see,
bastard, you, yeah.
yeah, it's not the same. You've not got the same vehemence that I've got in
No, but then again, what you've got to remember is I actually talk proper.
it.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, go on.
Bastard.
You
How do
keep
you
telling
get
yourself.
bastard? And that it's not, it's an R.
It's a harder A, isn't it?
Oh yeah, without a doubt, yeah.
Yeah.
And you're right, it actually conveys something, or yeah, a bit different for me.
Mm.
You know, when you start getting into it, it's great, isn't it, phonetics?
And we've gone off on a completely different tangent.
No worries, let's bring it back.
Okay.
Okay, yeah. So I mean, we've now got something, and we're trying to get out there. But you mentioned, you know, the independents. I'm more interested in the independents.
Okay.
And the only reason being is like you say, they are a smaller organisation. It seems.
Yeah.
In my mind, they would probably take very good care of you than be lost within a huge organisation.
Yeah. I mean, I obviously I don't want to be caught saying anything against my.
No, not at all.
But
that's
yeah, they
just
are. I mean, so what I've had a couple of authors come to me who have been published by the big boys, and they've said that they felt like they were part of a conveyor belt. So you know, they were all,
that's
oh yeah, we love the book, it's great, and then you pass on to somebody else, and then you pass on to somebody else, and then what happens is that they take control.
Yeah.
So one particular author said to me, when it came to doing his second book, they wanted to dictate when it was released, what the title was. They wanted a lot more control over it, and he felt he didn't want that. So you know, if you work with me, then first and foremost, the copyright is yours. Now, a lot of the big boys will want to take the copyright for themselves. So one of the things I always say is that you fully own the copyright. I own the book, so you know, if I've published the book, you can't then take that and give it to somebody else to publish. But the content of it is yours, so you could take that content and have somebody else publish it if you then ended your contract with me. So there's a difference. Your royalty that you'll get from the sale of the book, you will always get a higher royalty rate with an independent than you will with the big boys. You're unlikely to get a advance payment because we don't have the budget for that. And to be fair, a lot of the big publishing houses don't now, unless you're huge, that then they're not offering it anymore. But certainly as little guys, we don't have that. The one thing I will say, Stephen, and this is something that I'm always really keen to point out, is if you think you're going to be the next J.K. Rowling or the next, Tim Robbins or whatever, then you're in it for the wrong reason. You will not make money out of your book unless you sell an awful lot. And the way that you make the most money is selling it yourself, either at the back of the room or at events. Because by the time the bookstore has taken their percentage, Waterstones want a 55% discount on.
Wow, really?
Yeah. So you're selling the book for £10. Waterstones will give you £4.50 for it. Then you've got to take out your print costs, which is anything between £1.75 and £3, depending on how big it is, how many pictures it's got in it, how you have it printed. So you're lucky to make £2.50 on a book. It sells for £10. So it's one of the things that I always say to people. Why you do it? If you want it to make you rich, then think again. And I'm always really straight up and honest with people about that, because I would never steer anybody wrong. So working with an independent, you get that kind of flat out advice from us. We will work with you to get the right book. I mean, I've got authors that I work with all the time, and I want, when I put a book out there, it's got my name on it as well as it's got their name on it.
Right.
So I need to make sure that when it's on a shelf in Waterstones, that people are going to pick that up and go, yeah, that's actually a really good read. Whereas I think sometimes with the bigger boys, it's all about how much they can sell. And, 50 Shades of Grey is a brilliant example of that. They had a market for women that were looking for something a little bit more raunchy than Mills and Boon, and they published a load of tosh. And that is my personal opinion. There are people out there who loved it, but to me, it's poorly written.
Did you read it?
I couldn't read it.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I'm sorry. I put it down after. I don't think I managed to get through a chapter. I don't think.
Was it bad memories or what?
No, it was just so poorly written.
She never did that. That's impossible.
There's that too, obviously. Yeah, I'm probably going to get letters now. No, it's. But yeah, they got away with that because they had the money behind it to hype it, and off it went. Whereas if you work with somebody like myself, we'll make sure. Yeah, don't get me wrong. Every single book goes out with an error in it, and that's down to the fact that you can read and read and read and read, and you will go word blind after a while. And there's always going to be one error, and that's not just an independence. The very first Harry Potter books are selling for thousands and thousands of pounds now because there's errors in them. The Stephen King, I think it was It, recently when the movie came out, that was printed with pages all back to front. 400 came before 200. Yeah.
Wow.
So it happens. It happens with every single book that's out there. As you can imagine, I read a lot. I'm now at the point where I can't read some of my favourite authors that I used to read because my editing head kicks in, particularly when it's been written in America and not been transcribed for the UK market. So it still has all the American English as opposed to the UK. And I find that really hard. For instance, They Lighted the Candles is the one that will make me hurl a book across the room because they lit them. So it's little things like that. You're going to get it. So working with an indie, you'll get a closer relationship. You'll have more freedom for the book to be how you want it to be. And you'll have that hand holding.
Cool. Now let me ask you this then. So you touched on something there. They own the copyright of the content. You own the book. Is that right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right. Let's say a book has been written.
Yeah.
And somebody like myself gets hold of it. Yeah. As a filmmaker and goes, oh, do you know what? I like the look of this. I want to make it as a short film.
Mm-hmm.
What would I need to do?
So it all depends what the contract has been signed. So my contracts say that we will negotiate a deal with screenwriters, and then the publisher will have a percentage of it, and then the author has a percentage of any deal that we make with the screenwriter. If it's been self-published, then it just becomes speaking to the author and saying we want to make a movie, and they'll go, yay! But yeah, you would have to speak to a publisher first before you can take the content.
What about if you did a complete rewrite to do a screenplay?
If it's based on the same story, you would still need to speak to the publisher.
Right, okay. Beware, people, all right? There's no way around this. Beware.
Yes, and we get very, very cross.
Yeah, I wouldn't want to cross you.
No. I mean, to be fair, if it's a smaller publisher, the chances are I'll go, yeah, let's do it, because anything you put out there is going to help us sell books.
Right.
So we're pretty reasonable folk. We're not going to go, yeah, you can have it, but it's going to cost you 50 grand.
Yeah.
We are sensible. Well, I like to say we're sensible people. And that's the thing working with an indie, is that we've always got the authors back. We want to make sure that they get what what's good for them when we get the book out there. So
yeah.
we wouldn't kind of go, no, absolutely not, or pay us a shed ton of money.
Yeah, no.
Unless you've got a shed ton of money, and then absolutely, I want all of it.
So what would you say to somebody? Yeah, what advice would you give to them right now? Yeah.
Yeah.
Would you say to them, come on, get up off your arse, put pen to paper, let's do it together? What would you say?
Yeah, absolutely. I hate the expression, there's never been a better time, but there's never been a better time to write your book. You can't go anywhere, you can't do anything. So all of you business owners that I have ever met that have said to me, I'd love to write a book, I just don't have time. The universe has listened. You now have time. So that's one excuse gone. I can't write a book, there's another excuse gone. The only thing that is stopping you writing right now is you. So do it. Get in front of your computer. Don't worry about how it reads. Just get it out there and give it a shot. You never know. It could be something that changes your business right now.
What about minimum page count? What should we be looking at?
There isn't. There is a... obviously, you can either have a small ebook, you could have a novella, you could have a pocketbook, or you can have a full-on big self-help guide. There was a bit of a phase for smaller reads, so bite-sized things, particularly for business owners who are lazy or who just don't have time to read huge, great swathes of content. So giving them an easier read tends to make them want it more. So there was the whole phase of sort of 20,000 words, 40,000. I would suggest a novel is going to have lots more than that. An autobiography is going to be no less than 60,000, more likely 100. But don't let that bog you down. Really, don't be thinking, oh, crikey, I've got to write 100,000 words. That's a huge mammoth task. I can't do it. It's like somebody putting, a all-you-can-eat buffet in front of you and saying, right, off you go. It kind of outfaces you, and you're like, I can't do it.
Yeah.
Just sit down and write a chapter. See how it goes.
Is there a market for short stories?
Yeah, absolutely. Particularly on sort of Kindle reads and things like that. Again, people suffer with a little bit with attention shortage. So little short stories are great, and it's a good way of getting started as well, because you can then always put them together in a book full of short stories.
That's where I was leading with that one. The only reason why I say that is because I know a couple of people that have written some fantastic little short stories. And it was almost like, do you know what? Let's bring them together.
Yeah. Well,
let's collate them and put them in, and then maybe put it out as a filming opportunity.
Well, there's that. I mean, there's a lot of sort of famous authors. Jim Butcher. I'm trying to think of some of the ones that I've seen. That what they'll do is that they'll create a book on a theme, and then you get the authors come together and they each stick a short story in. Weight of all the different authors together, and it's a way of introducing people to you as a writer.
Without you know what? That's an excellent idea, isn't it? Yeah. Yeah, I like it. Well, do you know what? Believe it or not, we've done over an hour.
Wow, that's gone.
Yeah, I know. I knew that you could talk because you're a woman. Well, look, what I'm going to do is, firstly, I'm going to say thank you very much indeed for taking this time.
My pleasure.
To talk to us about the publishing side of things and everything else. Now, secondly, I'm going to say to you, do not go off the line. All right, I'm going to do my wrap up now to my my little audience that want to know what's going on next, and just to say my thank yous. So bear with me. I'm going to finish. You're going to hang on to the line. All right, it will go pause for about 3 seconds, and then we're in.
Okay.
So here we go, Taryn. Thank you very much. For today. It's given us a bit of an insight into the publishing side. I would love to. No. I'm going to start to write. I've got a few ideas. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to get in touch with you and I'm going to put it out there. Guys, if you're out there and you've liked this, Taryn now is going to give us all her information before we do the close. Yeah? In fact, do that now, Taryn. How can people get hold of you? As if you want them to.
Yep, so there's two websites you can have a look at. There is FCM Publishing, which is Foxtrot Charlie Mike Publishing.co.uk, and Kronos Publishing. Both of those are out there. All of our contact details are on there. So if you're interested, have a look and see what we've done.
Fantastic. Taryn, once again, thank you very much. Guys, thank you for listening, and we will see you again another day.